All right, let's try to visualize our cart on the screen. And so what we're going to do in the checkout screen is we're going to add our cart card, like our restaurant card, and then our cart information in a raw form. We're going to try to do that. Now, the first thing we need to do is we need to go over to our app.navigator, because in our app.navigator is where the majority of our contexts live. So what we're going to do is we're going to add cart context provider. And the cart context provider is going to come from services cart.context, right? And by doing this, by wrapping this down here, what we can do now is enable subsequently all of the components beneath it to get the cart information. Now, in order to do that now, what we're going to say here is use context. And then we're going to import. If we go back over here, well, actually, let's just import it in a proper way. Let's do import, and then we'll do cart context. And we'll say from ... and say services cart, and we'll say cart.context. And by doing this, we can now say over here, return, and so say const cart is equal to the use context of cart context. All right. And what we can then do is, for instance, import text from React Native, right? Just quickly get a text box going and put it down here, or maybe up here. Let's put text/text. And let's do a JSON.stringify. This will stringify the information, so transform it into text of cart. And if we do that and we go over here to cart, undefined is not an object using cart context. So is this actually the value that I need to be importing? Let's go look. Over here we can see export const cart context. So I'm importing cart context. Undefined is not a value. So let's go take a look here. In the values, I am exposing cart. So what exactly is going on here? And so if we quickly go look over here in our terminal, and what we'll be able to see is cart.context is not. So let's console.log cart context and see if that gives us anything. So by doing that, let's console.log it outside here. That way we at least get it. So cart context does have a value, right? And cart context is allowing us access. So let's just quickly do context here. And instead of doing this, let's just put a string here for now. And let's console.log the context here. And let's see what we get. So if we reload here, and then we go over to our checkout screen, what we'll be able to see, if we scroll up here, is undefined. And if we go ahead and take a look at our cart context, we can see that we made a minor typo right here. This is supposed to be value. And so if we fix that up, and then we go to our checkout screen, what we're going to see here is that if we reload and we scroll to the bottom, cart now has all of the values. Small minor typo, caused a lot of grief though. And so over here, now we can take the cart off of the context, and we can put the cart inside of JSON.stringify. And over here, then we'll see an empty array, and we'll see the array populate as we implement our feature set. And so if we head on over to the restaurant detail screen, inside of the restaurant detail screen is where we will be implementing our button. And we'll be doing it outside of the scroll view of the coffee, the Coke, and like the menu, right? Basically outside of there, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be putting a spacer. And that spacer is going to create some space between the menu and our order button. So we're going to say position. Well, actually it's between the bottom and our button rather. We already have sufficient space between the menu. So if we put bottom and then we put size equal to large, what we're going to put inside here is something called a order button. And that order button is going to be a component that we're going to get. So first of all, we need our spacer in here. So let's go ahead and get our spacer. Let's just do import spacer, and let's do that from, and say dot dot slash dot dot slash dot dot slash component spacer, and then spacer dot component. And then once we have our spacer, our order button is going to come from, well, you guessed it, it's going to come from a styles file. So in order for us to do that, what we're going to need to build is a new file over here, right? Inside of components. And we're going to call that, well, inside of restaurant list styles rather. And so what we're going to do is we're going to export const, and we're going to say order button here. And that order button is going to be of type styled button. And that button is going to come from React Native Paper. So we're going to import the button component from React Native Paper. And so now that we have that button component, we can put it over here, and then we can say that it works like this. Now, one more thing we need to do to this button component is we need to give it colors. So we're going to say attributes like we've done in the past, and we're going to say that the color is colors.brand.primary. So that's one more thing we want to do inside of here. Now, colors isn't imported here, so we're going to say import colors from dot dot slash dot dot slash dot dot slash infrastructure, and then we're going to say theme, and we're going to take the colors. And with that, we now have all of our colors. Then what we need to do is we need to set a padding on this. So we're going to say padding, and we're going to do props, and as always, props.theme.space. We're going to select the second spacing on this because that's what we need. Then we're going to say that this button only has a width of 80%, and we're going to align itself to the center. And by putting all of these properties ahead of time, what we can do now is in the restaurant detail screen, we're going to go ahead and we're going to import order button from dot dot slash components restaurant list styles. And by having this order button here, what we need to do now is we need to give it some text. So we'll say order button, and we'll say order special only $12.99. Okay, so by doing this now, if we go into any of these, well, now we're seeing the actual button pop up, right? We're seeing it happen right before our eyes, but it's not really coming along the way that we would expect it to look. So we're going to say mode is equal to contained. And by doing that, now it's all filled in. That's the button we want to see. This is what it's supposed to look like. Okay. Well, we'll also give it an icon. And we'll say that the icon is equal to cash-USD. And by doing that, now there's a little icon here. That's looking a lot better. And one more thing we need to do on press. And this is going to be a function that's going to actually implement what's going to happen when you add to cart. Okay, so we have our button, right? We have our cart visualized here. And we have everything set up to go, but we don't have our cart inside of here. So one more thing we're going to need here is we're going to need to import cart context. We're going to import that from dot dot slash dot dot slash dot dot slash services cart context, right? And so by doing that, now what we can do is we can say use context, and we can say const cart, or rather add to cart is equal to the use context of cart context. And now that we have add to cart, we can basically add to cart over here. And that's exactly what we want to do, right? We want to add to cart, and we want to say that our item is a special. And then what we want to say, right, is that the price is $12.99. And the reason we're going to put the price like this is because the expectation is that the rounding happens at the last two numbers. So if we had $12, it would be like this. In this case, this is $12.99. So the rounding happens at the last two numbers. This would be $120.99. This would be $120. So that's the way that Stripe is expecting the price to come in. Okay, so knowing that, we can now add to cart. And if we hit this button, what we're going to see here, item special, $12.99. Amazing. But there's one issue here, right? There's one small issue. We didn't add the restaurant. So what is the restaurant right now? Well, let's go take a look at the checkout screen. If we pull in the current restaurant and we said, hey, show me the current restaurant, well, that's not going to have a value at all. So if we said restaurant and then did that, that doesn't have a value. So there's one more thing we need to actually do in our restaurant detail screen that we've forgotten to do, right? And that is we need to pass in the current restaurant. That was the second parameter. So if we take the current restaurant and we say add to cart this item and to this restaurant, now if we go over here and we hit this again, now we see the full restaurant and we see that our cart has two specials in it.